Hi, and welcome to the Windows 10 April 2018 update, also known as 1803. This release is running on build 17134 and is currently available to download from Windows Update if you go and manually check for updates, and is expected to be pushed out to volume licensing around May the 7th. Now, there are already plenty of videos and guides out there explaining the new features of the April 2018 update, but I'll try to focus on what you need to know when upgrading to this version in an enterprise environment. We'll look at how these features can be configured and controlled with things like group policy, as well as any other changes which may impact you as an administrator or your end users. Before jumping into the details, I first want to explain some best practice when it comes to a new update like this being released. You should first get the build downloaded and deployed out to a few test machines, first to look for any initial driver incompatibilities or any other obvious upgrade blockers. Next, you'll want to deploy it out to your pilot users within the IT department. At the same time, you should also be deploying the build to a test device of each type you have in your business. Finally here, test your business critical applications, just to make sure your end users have the basic software they need functioning. This might include things like the Office applications, VPN connectivity software, or security software. After a few weeks or months of testing within IT with no apparent issues, it's time to push the update out to your pilot users. This should be at least a couple of users in each department, with the importance being to cover your software portfolio. The most critical piece of Windows as a service here is to have an open and casual method of communicating both with and between your pilot users. A Microsoft Teams channel is ideal for this sort of thing. The more interactive your pilot users are, the more effectively you'll be able to find and remediate issues that are occurring. Spend the next few months monitoring activity within these pilot user groups, and once the department has their whole application portfolio working as expected, push the update to that wider production group. This could take anywhere between maybe 1 and potentially several months to cover all departments depending on the applications used and the speed and compatibility of their developer updates. Using something like Windows Analytics Upgrade Readiness can be really helpful here. As each feature update is released, so are the Microsoft recommended security baselines for an enterprise organization. These baselines recommend which settings to configure in group policy to ensure your estate is secure and any new policies are being managed correctly. As well as new features, some legacy settings which tend to slow down the performance of devices with no real security benefit have been removed. One of the best tools for analyzing these policy changes and comparing them with your current estate is the Policy Analyzer tool, which is free from Microsoft as part of the Security Compliance Toolkit. You'll find links to both the 1803 security baselines and the Policy Analyzer tool below. One of the biggest new features to this update is Timeline. This is an enhancement to the existing task view, which you can find as a third icon along the bottom left, or by pressing the Windows key and tab. From here, you'll be pulled back to see all of your open applications, along with the ability to create new desktops moved to the very top of the screen here. Now on the bottom half of the screen, we can see our new timeline. This is a visual list of what we've been working on this particular device, and if you allow it, other devices utilizing the same account. At first, you'll just see your top activities, but once you've been using the device for a few days, you'll be able to filter it down to activities to show on a per hour basis. Great if you know something you were working on at a meeting at 10 AM, for example. We can scroll back to that particular time and carry on with that document right away. There's also a search here available at the top right as well. Universal apps have the best integration with Timeline, as we're able to see specific areas or pages we were working on and immediately resume at that point. Edge, for example, will show you all the different websites that you've visited. Traditional apps still appear, but will simply state which document or file or website they were working on. Now, it is possible to manage what appears in this timeline as an individual user, both by right-clicking an item and selecting Remove, or en masse by selecting Clear All from earlier today. You'll also, if you have Cortana enabled, see these events appear in a Cortana UI. So I can see here, for example, the security baselines for 1803 that we were working on earlier. It's also possible to manage this feature in an enterprise using group policy. These settings can be found under Computer for Configuration, Admin Templates, System, and then head down to OS Policies. When upgrading to 1803, you may notice that the in-place upgrade process is a lot quicker than it used to be. In my recent March video, I explained how this upgrade process has changed to help reduce the average offline time from 82 minutes down to just 30 minutes. Check out that video for more details for this very welcome improvement. As well as these speed improvements, we can now run custom scripts at either the pre-install phase or the pre-commit phase of an in-place upgrade. This could be really handy for making changes to installed software or backing up user data, for example. The pre-install phase is when setup starts, but before the compatibility checks, and is performed by having a pre-install script file inside of System32, update and run, or run once, depending on if you want this script to be retained for future upgrades. This same location is used for the pre-commit script, which occurs prior to the upgrade being applied and the system rebooting. You can also create a failure command script to run should the upgrade fail and you want to restore any of those changes you made from the initial script. If you're already using Windows Autopilot, then you'll be glad to hear there's a new page that has been introduced into the setup process. This shows much more detailed information about the security and management policies being enforced on the device before the user is able to reach their desktop. And BitLocker has had an update allowing you to perform an in-place upgrade from 1709 up to 1803 without suspending the encryption. Now there are a few parameter switches we can place onto the setup.exe to specify whether to always suspend BitLocker, which is the default behavior currently, attempt to upgrade without suspending, but suspend if we need to, or upgrade without suspending, but fail the upgrade if that doesn't work. There are a few prerequisites to this, including the use of TPM protector only, so not using a PIN, for example, as well as having secure boot enabled. Now, this new functionality is not enabled by default, but it can be applied using a custom task sequence step. Check out Michael Niehause's blog for more details. Since Windows 10 launched, we've had a feature known as quiet hours. This was used to prevent notifications from distracting you during specific hours of the day, or when you get home from work, for example. Well, this feature has been improved and rebranded in 1803 as Focus Assist. You can access this by right-clicking the action button in the bottom right here and selecting Focus Assist, where we can set this feature to either off, priority notifications only, which can be configured by the user, or alarms only. We can also find more granular settings for this if we search for Focus Assist settings and start here. Well, from here we can set up some automatic rules so focus hours comes on at specific hours of the day, as well as when you're duplicating your display for a presentation, for example. There's also the option for when you're playing a full-screen game to enable this mode. Once those activities have ended, you will have a summary of any missed notifications in the Action Center. These settings can also be managed and configured with group policy, though the names haven't been updated just yet. We can find this under User Configuration, Admin Templates, Start Menu and Taskbar, and then the Notifications submenu. The Microsoft Store has had a number of improvements and further integrations with the operating system, meaning we're now able to do things like download fonts and language packs, or now known as local experience packs, through the store. We're able to view and configure both of these in the settings panes too. So if I jump over here to settings, we can go to time and language to configure our language settings, or if we head to personalization, and then the fonts submenu on the left, we're able to see a list of all of the fonts we have installed, jump into one of these fonts to get a whole load more detail. For example, I can type my own sentence in here, see how that text will look in a different size, in the different font faces that we have available as well. This could lead to the possibility of downloading and installing things like fonts and language packs from the Microsoft Store dynamically, rather than bundling these large language pack files into your own install image itself. The Edge browser has come a long way since it launched with Windows 10 back in July 2015, and this update continues that work. The hub at the top right here has now been improved so it's much wider and contains much more information, as well as having the ability to download and read ebooks directly in the browser. So we can go over here and see, for example, the hit refresh button from Satya Nadella. In addition to this, if we now have tabs that play audio, we have a little speaker icon at the top. We can click this to immediately mute that tab. Another great new feature is called clutter-free printing. So if I head to this MSN article, for example, and wanted to print this particular page, I'd go up to File and Print. And normally this would take, in this case, 7 pages to print all of the text, the images, and the adverts. But if you see on the left-hand side, we now have this option for clutter-free printing. If we select that, then the article will print just the images and the text that are relevant to that article itself. Service workers have been added to the underlying code of Edge too. Now this means we're able to download progressive web apps from the Microsoft Store. If you've not heard of a PWA before, it's a sort of website which also has the ability to locally cache data on your device for offline viewing, as well as, more importantly, being able to get notifications from that site even when it's not open. Now Twitter is one of the first examples of this. The Twitter client app on the Microsoft Store is now officially a PWA. So for example, I might not have this app open, but if somebody tweets at me, I will get a Windows notification alerting me of that. And finally, the Application Guard window. Now this is a feature introduced back in 1709. It's not enabled by default, so if you head over to Windows Features, we're able to turn on Windows Defender Application Guard. Now this is using virtualization technology to sit a browser window outside of the operating system. This is done to help protect our operating system from any browser-based exploits. Now if we head back over to Edge and click the 3 ellipses at the top right, we have a new option for an Application Guard window. In addition to this, we now have the ability to download files from this browser-based window. Now to do this, if we head over to Group Policy, Computer Configuration, Admin Templates, Windows Components, and right towards the end, we have Windows Defender Application Guard. Now most of these policies were available in 1709, but this last one at the end here allow files to download and save to the host operating system. Now this will create a folder on your local OS where these files will be transferred over to. But bear in mind, these files may not be safe and may pose a security risk the same way any standard browser download may do currently. Each feature update brings changes to the Settings menu, and this time is no different. Functionality such as disk cleanup can now be found in System under Storage Sense, as well as the new Sound category here. So this has been moved over from the Control panel. Now one great feature that I'm a big fan of here is the app volume and device preferences right at the bottom here. Now this screen allows us to set a different application to have a different audio device output. Great if you want to play music through speakers, but need to have a call through your headset, for example. Now, as well as these moved sound settings, another thing that's made it from the control panel over to the settings menu is the startup apps. So if we head to Windows Settings and Apps, we have a new tab on the left here for startup. So in this case, I can see Defender, Microsoft OneDrive, and some sysinternals tools automatically starting. You can easily toggle these on and off directly from this screen. And finally, over to ease of access. Now, there's been a lot of accessibility improvements in 1803. There are special videos out there by the Microsoft accessibility team covering this. However, I just wanted to point out some of the improvements here. We include on-screen keyboard improvements, granular narrator options, color filters to assist the visually impaired or colorblind users. Dictation has also been enabled, though it's only for EN US language. But this allows you to press Windows and H on any Windows input box and start talking to have your voice turned directly into text. Check out this ease of access area of settings to check it all out. A few other things to note. The desktop icon for Microsoft Edge is automatically placed onto the user's desktop after upgrading to 1803. In addition to this, shortcuts to Documents and Photos folders are automatically placed on this rail bar on the Start menu. You can customize this list either as a user by right-clicking and selecting Personalize this list, and this will take you over to Settings, Personalization, and Start, where you can toggle all these different folders on and off. One other great little improvement is the ability to run software as an elevated user just using a keyboard shortcut. So if we search for PowerShell, for example, I can hold Control Shift before pressing Enter, and the UAC prompt will appear before launching PowerShell as an elevated user. With each new build, we see a few more legacy features of Windows getting removed as they are upgraded and replaced. Language control, for example, can no longer be found in the control panel, which is something we looked at in settings earlier. The home group functionality to create and configure home groups has been removed too. If you were previously using this feature, make sure you start to investigate more modern options built into the operating system, such as direct file sharing. Existing home groups will continue to work as usual for the time being. If you're performing a fresh install of 1803, then the XPS viewer is not installed by default, and you need to head over to Windows Features to enable this optionally. Finally, now this feature hasn't been removed by Microsoft, but they have announced that they're no longer working on software restriction policies through group policy. Instead, you should manage which software is allowed to run utilizing the Windows Defender Application Control feature. And that's just about it for the Windows 10 April 2018 update. Thank you very much for watching and making it this far through the video. If you've got any questions, you can reach out to me on Twitter or LinkedIn, and remember to check out the blog too. Thanks again, and best of luck with your upgrade.